You close one laptop and open another. For a second, you pause. Not because you're overwhelmed, but because you need half a second to remember who you are in this window. Same room, same chair, same hoodie. Different hierarchy, different expectations, different vocabulary. And you switch instantly. Your voice adjusts. Your posture shifts slightly. Your thinking reorganizes around a different set of priorities. That switch is the quiet rupture of remote work. Not flexibility, not productivity, identity. Imagine someone named James, 32, fully remote, 2 full-time roles. On Tuesday at 2 p.m., he's leading a strategy call. Confident, directive, framing decisions. He speaks in outcomes, in metrics, in long-term positioning. He interrupts when necessary. He drives clarity. At 2:45 p.m., he closes that laptop, rotates slightly in the same chair, and opens another one. Different Slack, different calendar, different company. Now he's more cautious, more diplomatic. Different power structure, different unwritten rules. He listens longer, speaks softer. His room doesn't change. The lighting doesn't change. The walls don't change. But internally, something recalibrates. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, there's a brief, almost invisible disorientation. Which one of these is closer to me? Have you ever felt that shift? That moment where you adjust your tone, your confidence, even your level of ambition depending on which window you're in? Write in the comments whether you've noticed yourself doing this. Most people don't recognize the shift until someone names it. Overemployment is usually framed as a strategy. Stack salaries, optimize time, manage overlapping meetings, financially efficient, logically defensible. But the deeper story isn't financial, it's structural. For most of modern adulthood, career wasn't just something you did, it was something you inhabited. What do you do? Wasn't casual conversation, it was identity shorthand. Your job signaled competence, ambition, reliability, social position. And the office reinforced that physically. You entered a building designed for one version of you. Same lobby, same badge, same meeting rooms, same hierarchy. Repetition inside a stable environment fused role and self. Work had gravity. It pulled identity toward it and kept it there. Remote work reduced that gravity. Now work exists inside the same physical space as everything else. The same desk where James eats. The same screen where he scrolls late at night. The same room where he rests on weekends. There is no architectural boundary between professional self and private self. And when boundaries dissolve, roles flatten. When roles flatten, identity loosens. 2 jobs, same desk, 3 Slack accounts, 1 nervous system. James doesn't commute into a new hierarchy. He doesn't walk through a door that signals psychological transition. He clicks, and clicking compresses identity. At first, that compression feels empowering, adaptable, efficient. He feels sharp, agile, valuable in multiple systems at once. He experiences a certain quiet superiority in being able to operate across hierarchies without friction. But over time, something subtle begins to thin. In one company, he's decisive and influential. In another, he's careful and easily replaceable. In one space, he sets direction. In another, he executes someone else's. Both versions are real. Both are functional. But neither feels total. And this is where the internal tension deepens. Identity, psychologically, depends on coherence. The sense that different parts of you belong to the same narrative. When roles multiply without shared context, coherence requires more effort. James sometimes catches himself replaying conversations and noticing how differently he sounded. He wonders whether those shifts are strategic or adaptive, or whether they are eroding something stable underneath. Late at night, when both laptops are finally closed and the room is silent, there's a quieter thought that lingers longer than before. If I remove the roles, what remains? Traditionally, identity strengthened through stable context, physical immersion, social mirroring, environmental continuity. You saw the same faces. You absorbed the same expectations. Your brain associated space with self. Remote work weakens all 3. Context becomes fluid. Colleagues become rectangles. Interaction becomes scheduled and compressed. Feedback becomes technical. When James receives criticism in one role, it doesn't travel as deep as it once might have. He closes the tab, opens another dashboard. Different standards, different expectations. The emotional echo shortens. Not because he's indifferent, but because the role is no longer the container of the self. This is de-identification, not burnout, not laziness, separation. And here is the part most people misunderstand. The dangerous part isn't burnout, it's emotional detachment. Burnout is loud, it exhausts you, it forces confrontation. Detachment is quiet, it numbs, it reduces intensity, it makes everything slightly less personal. Success feels lighter. Failure feels lighter. Praise lands, but doesn't penetrate. Criticism registers, but doesn't define. The emotional amplitude narrows. Over time, this changes more than work. When identity becomes modular at work, the habit can generalize. You begin optimizing versions of yourself in friendships, in relationships, even in family dynamics. You become efficient at adapting, but adaptation can slowly replace authenticity. And here's another structural shift. Trust traditionally formed through shared physical environments and repeated exposure. In remote modular systems, trust becomes transactional, performance-based, conditional. If attachment to institutions becomes lighter, attachment to people within them can become lighter too. Earlier generations were socialized into fusion. Find your calling, commit deeply, stay loyal, build identity through permanence. Remote-era professionals are socialized into modularity. Diversify skills, maintain leverage, remain adaptable, avoid over-attachment. These aren't just economic strategies. They are identity strategies shaped by volatility and instability. In unstable systems, fusion increases fragility. If your entire self is fused to one institution and it collapses, the psychological shock is existential. Modularity increases resilience. If one role disappears, the self remains intact because it was never fully absorbed. That resilience is real, but it changes emotional texture. Career becomes operational rather than existential. And when career stops being existential, something has to replace it. One evening, James tries to explain what he does to a friend. He hesitates, not because he's hiding anything, but because no single description feels accurate. The strategic lead, the careful executor, the adaptable operator across systems. Identity now stretches across multiple hierarchies without fully belonging to any of them. And that realization is both stabilizing and unsettling. If identity can stretch across hierarchies without breaking, how tightly was it fused to begin with? For most of the 20th century, work functioned as biography. It structured your story, anchored your routine, determined your social circle, signaled who you were becoming. Now work increasingly functions as interface. You log in, you perform, you log out. The self remains. Overemployment doesn't create this transformation. It reveals it. In a digital environment, identity no longer requires singular institutional attachment. Roles become layers rather than anchors. The split identity worker is not fractured. He is modular by adaptation. Career becomes configurable, identity becomes portable, and work becomes something you execute within systems, not something that defines the system of you. This may feel destabilizing if you were raised to equate stability with maturity. It may feel rational if you were shaped by economic volatility and institutional fragility, but it reflects a broader cultural shift, from permanence to optionality, from depth to flexibility, from identity as institution to identity as architecture. Overemployment is not simply about earning more money. It is a signal that the relationship between work and self has thinned, not disappeared, not collapsed, recalibrated. And the final question is no longer whether you can manage two roles at once. The final question is this: if work is no longer the central anchor of identity, what will you consciously choose to anchor yourself to instead? If this made you reflect even slightly on how you relate to work and identity, write your perspective in the comments. I read them carefully. And if you want more deep psychological breakdowns of cultural shifts like this, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Because these quiet structural changes are shaping us more than we realize.